Glad to know you're still with us. The National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, has confirmed a 3.5% gross domestic product (GDP) growth in the second quarter of 2022. The NBS did not, despite the growth, fail to note the negative impact of oil theft and rising inflation on the recorded figure. The 3.5% growth recorded in the second quarter was slower than the result in the corresponding period of 2021, as the second quarter 2022 growth rate decreased by 1.47% points from the 5.01% growth rate recorded in the second quarter of 2021. But as a talking point and for further analysis, I'm joined by Mr. Kasim Garuba Kurfi, the MD, APT Securities and Mutual Funds Limited. Glad to have you join us today. Hello, glad to have you join us. All right, and I'm also joined by Mukhtar Mohammed, the CEO Finance with Mukhtar. Good to have you join us, Mr. Mukhtar.
Good morning.
Okay, good to have both of you join us virtually. All right, let's look at this now. Nigeria's gross domestic product, that's the GDP, grew by 3.54% year-on-year in real terms in the second quarter of 2022. Now, apart from being an improvement compared to the 3.11% growth recorded in the first quarter of 2022, it has also defied estimates. Mr. Mohammed, I'd like you to talk to us about this.
It's what we see now. I think it's something that is expected, and also maybe we are even happy with the growth that we've seen via the economic situation globally, especially like you said in your report, and taking into reckoning that we've had a lot of challenges, especially in the oil sector, which is the cash cow of the Nigerian economy. So if you look at that via what we're saying now, you could say it's a big surprise, but not so much. Remember that, like I said, most of the sectors that were shut down are opening up, and but also you need to look at that some sectors are turning up negative returns because of the crisis in those sectors, because of FX shortages. When you look at those constraints, then you are a little bit worried, but then you are happy that the Nigerian economy is not doing badly if you talk about GDP growth. But that is not the challenge of the economy at the moment. The economy has more challenges to think of, especially in the area of job creation, in the area of real GDP growth. When I mean real GDP growth, I mean the growth that affects the common man, the growth that is from the bottom to the up level. But what we're seeing here now is growth as a reduction of productivity in some key sectors, which for me is also good, but it will be better if we begin to see the real GDP growth. So, but again, like the only exciting thing about this growth is when you look at the non-oil sector, seems to be performing very, very well in spite of the challenges that we are seeing in the oil sector. So you could give government credits that they've been able to develop the non-oil sector.
All right, thank you for your thoughts right there. If you can hear me, Mr. Kurfi, can you confirm if you can hear me? All right, now this is it. What for you is the import of this growth in GDP? Seeing that there are other economic indicators that are not favorable, that's also alluding to what Mr. Mohammed just talked about.
Well, in view of our unemployment and employment, you see that we need to address the right channel. Today, as I'm talking to you, agriculture is contributing 23%. And you remember that we have a lot of unemployment, especially those that have not even had this Western education. A lot of them, they are roaming about. If we can address the security, the agriculture contribution to GDP could have doubled. And that could have improved our GDP generally. The other side of it, you look at it, the manufacturing sector. The manufacturing that employ has just contributed less than 9%. And that is not good enough. We need to see 2 times of or double digit by the manufacturing sector so that we can assure of our due use of unemployment. The other sector of the economy is the oil. What is the contribution to the oil to the GDP today is less than 7%. And what is the contribution of the banking and the insurance sector to the GDP is less than 5%. These are the 2 sectors that employ less.
All right, if you can hear me, please.
Very well, with about 18%, which shows you that the telecom side is contributing tremendously to the GDP, but the government needs to address more of the power so that we get the small-scale industry and entrepreneurs playing a better role. Trading sector is contributing just about 16%, which is okay because we don't manufacture, so most of us we rely on trading of the imported good, providing employment for others. I think the earlier we address our sectors of the economy, the better for all of us.
Well, we'll come to sectoral analysis in a moment. But before then, let's get to this. Now, the Q2 2022 growth rate decreased by 1.47% points. That's from 5.01% growth rate recorded in the second quarter of 2021 and definitely increased by 0.44% points relative to 3.11% in the first quarter of 2022. Now, should we be concerned about the decline from 5.01% in the corresponding period of 2021 to 3.54% in 2022? Mr. Mukhtar, let's have your thoughts on that.
We should be very concerned. We should be very, very concerned about it. Like Mr. Kefi have said, we should be very, very concerned because key sectors that need to drive our economy going forward are having so much challenges, and most of those challenges are fundamental challenges. And though when you come to fundamental challenges in an economy, that means there is something you have been doing wrongly thus far, and you still continue to do such things. So those are fundamental challenges, and those are very, very problematic thing to deal with in an economy, especially in an economy like that what we have in Nigeria, that we don't seem to see GDP growth incommensurate with employment rate or underemployment. So it's something to be concerned about, and knowing that these challenges are brought about by issues that you could call it a global issue, but then that we are not prepared for, and even some of those issues that ought to be positive towards our economy are turning out to be negative towards our economy. Like I said, this is the first time we are seeing oil price hit above $100 per barrel, and yet Nigeria seems to be suffering instead of gaining from it, because we normally see Nigerian gains anytime we have oil price goes up, but this time for the first time.
Let me come in here. What is responsible for that deviation?
Is the monster. The monster called subsidy is not helping our economy. When then we had subsidy come in there, we had oil thief also comes in there. So those are the two challenges that are not making us to benefit from this boom that we are seeing in the oil sector. Just of recent, the Saudi private-owned national oil company declared the highest dividends. I mean, they have ever achieved. You could see also multinational like Shell, like Chevron, declaring humongous profits, and yet our own corporation like the NNPC has not contributed a dime to the Federation account, even if there's an argument over that. So that shows you that the kind of challenges that we've been going through in our economy, especially this challenge that has to do with subsidy payment. Oil tip also comes into there. Then the global economic crisis also have not helped matters, and so that also have impacted us, especially inflationary pressures, and also the rising rates in our interest rate also. So it's very, very challenging globally, but you mustn't use that to also begin to say that those challenges are not being addressed globally. But
let me
in
come
our
in
own
here.
case,
Let me come in here. There are those who are saying, Alhaji, please hold on. I'll come to you, please. Thank you. All right, let me come in here. There are those who are saying that irrespective of these challenges, how come we are able to record a growth in the GDP? You mind saying something about that before Mr. Garuba comes in?
No, what you see there is in terms of those growth in the GDP, like Mr. Garuba said, you see the agricultural sector, which is supposed to be the key driver of the Nigerian economy, is also in the productive side, and thus that is due to we are able to meet internal consumption in some areas. So, but when you go further into that report, you look at where we have the wheat, especially wheat that comes from outshore of this country, you see that we are not enjoying it. If you also see that every sector that is foreign dependent, and maybe FX that is FX dependent is also having those challenges. So it's not just because we are seeing those positive growth. Like you said, by and by last year, it's not positive in the real sense. And when you look at it quarter to quarter, you see a reduction in growth also. So it's not very positive. But it's just that because we are able to make about 5 point something percent the previous quarter, it's downplaying the negativity, but you cannot downplay that negativity. When you see from 5 point to 3 points, it's something to be worried about.
All right, thank you so much. And well, now, Mr. Garba, a breakdown of the GDP shows that services contributed 57.35% to the GDP. And when you look at the agriculture and industrial sector, they contributed 23.24% and the 19.4% respectively. I know you've talked about this earlier, but now the agricultural sector grew by 1.2% year on year. And then when we look at services sector, it expanded by 6.7%. But unfortunately, the industrial sector contracted by 2.3%. That's a further decline when compared to the 6.81% decline that was recorded in the previous quarter. Now, talk to us about the prospects in these sectors and how government and investors should react. Mr. Garba, let's have you on this.
Yes. Before I say that one, I just want to add 2 points in respect to what Mukhtar said.
Okay.
Why the price of crude oil is high and still we are down. We are down because, first and foremost, our refineries are all down. They are closed down. So therefore, the money we are getting from the crude oil, we use the same money to buy the refined product. So it adds less value to us because we are just taking it and returning it back to them. The other issue is the production. If you remember, in the previous year, our production is never below 2 million barrels per day. Today we are talking of 1.3, 1.2. So we are already down by 40%. Assuming that we are making the same production at 2, our gross GDP will be much higher and our devaluation of Naira could have been reduced because we could have earned more. And these are the 2 factors I wanted to add. Coming back to the sectorial analysis. Yes, of course, when you look at this, it's a fact, but the truth of the matter that we fail to get our priority rights. Our priority is first and foremost which of the sectors that employ more. Agriculture. Good enough we are in rice production, but we ought to be in wheat production and other production. And even we are in other production as we move to the rice, that could have saved our money from importation of wheat, so the cost of wheat couldn't have added value to us. The same thing with the other products like maize and what have you that we end up importing, which ought not have been imported. So there is a need to address that side through agricultural sector. Coming back to the manufacturing side. The manufacturing side contributing this could have been done better, but no lie, no infrastructures. All these affect the manufacturing side, and we need to address these 2 sectors, agriculture and manufacturing. As we have addressed the telecom is giving us a fantastic return of about 16%, which is nice. But if we could have done that to the power, and we could have done that to insecurity, agriculture could have doubled, manufacturing could have doubled, and this will change the whole game. And therefore, our contribution to the GDP could have been much better than what we are doing.
All right, thank you so much for that. Well, Mr. Mohammed, let's have your thought on that. So maybe you want to share a thought on that.
I totally agree with Mr. Kefi on that. But what I said about agriculture is what type of agriculture do we want to have? Do we have the advantage of being the best? You can't just be going in agriculture. You are not looking at your...
Okay, I guess you wanted to talk about comparative advantage. When you want to talk about agriculture, you look at all of that before you make policies and decisions that will, of course, better position you for gains. If you can hear me, please go on ahead, Mr. Mohammed.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. We need to look at our competitive advantage. We can't just be jack of...
Okay. Do go ahead if you can hear me. Okay. All right, Mukhtar, if you can hear me, I'd like you to quickly react to that. I'd like you to quickly react to that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Yes, we are hearing you.
Yes, I said when you look at our competitive advantage, we are not looking at our competitive advantage to take advantage. I mean, to begin to grow in that area. We cannot be jack of all trade, masters of none. If we want to be, if you talk about Ghana, you talk about cocoa, you talk about some other countries, you talk about their key agricultural products. But when you talk about Nigeria at the moment, before we used to talk about cocoa, we used to talk about granite in the north, we used to talk about all Texas, also Texas in the north also. But now when you talk about, we seem to be doing everything. Of recent, we saw the rice pyramid in Abuja, and after that it has disappeared. And also Ogun State is there saying they are the heart of rice. So, KB State also. Those are places that we could say, okay, if we want to go to rice production, let's put up our resources towards developing that sector and creating employment in those sectors. But we have not looked at that. We are being jack of all trade, master of none. We are not looking at what we are good at. It was recently discovered that we have the best cassava in the whole world.
All right.
And we have not taken advantage of that.
Okay.
We have not taken advantage of that yet, because again, like Mr. Kelfi said, you need to look at our infrastructure. Infrastructure is a challenge, especially the value chain in agriculture. We are not looking at that value chain, how storage facilities, how to store our products. Some years ago, we had that challenge that we're trying to import yam from Nigeria to the United States of America. That yam got spoiled inside the ship because we don't have a better storage facilities.
All right, wrapping up, Mr. Mohammed. Do go ahead. You can wrap up. All right, thank you. Mr. Garba, let's have your final thought on this issue, especially looking at the fact that the non-oil sector contributed 93.67% to the GDP in the second quarter of 2022. And this is higher than what was recorded in the first quarter of 2021. At that time, it was 92.58%. So what are the things we should begin to do to further deepen this particular sector? Very quickly, sir.
But I think the CBN has already been participating in giving some of these loans to the sectors. They should go ahead and continue with it, because a simple digit loan enables most of the services to be able to have a cheaper loan, and that will enable them to. But that is not good enough.
Okay,
it should have been supplemented with power. Power is the issue. We lack power, and the cost of diesel to generate power is now enormous.
All right. I think this is a good place to end the conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us, Mr. Garuba Kofi.
Thank you.
But many thanks to you, Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed. Thanks for joining us on the show and for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll talk about loan sharks' activities, which continues in Nigeria despite government clampdown. We'll take a closer look at the effect of these illegal practices on vulnerable Nigerians and regulatory issues. But that's a focus when we come back from this break. Stay with us. Glad to know you stay with us. The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, FCCPC, has asked Google to remove loan apps from the Play Store because they were engaging in unethical practices and breach of consumer privacy. Despite the fact that many of these apps have been removed, there are hundreds of others that have continued their business unhindered. According to Google policy, rules for lending apps require companies to leave a 60-day period between the approval of a loan and the repayment date. However, loan providers that target Nigerians display those rules, but in practice, the repayment periods are shorter. While there are some companies that give out loans and abide by the established rules, many Nigerians have been caught in the web of loan shark activities, where there are interest rates as high as 45%, as against the CBN interest rate of 14% per annum. Following cries from people, the government, Google, and scores of other agencies have been racing to crack down on predatory lending apps that have been found to charge exorbitant fees from customers in some cases and push ethical boundaries in their collection efforts. Meanwhile, there is more to this than what meets the eye. And to shed more light on this today, we have joining us Mr. Kasim Garuba Kofi, the Managing Director, APT Securities and Mutual Funds Limited. Good to have you join us again, Mr. Garba. All right. Well, let's look at this. Loans, well, there are those who would say that loans are not necessarily bad, but then when we look at the rate at which these loan sharks are cropping up in Nigeria, one would wonder what is responsible for that.
Well, what's responsible for that is lack of the legitimate loan at a cheaper rate. If our banks and most of the consumers provide credit at a reasonable rate, people will not go for shark loans. Assuming that, as in the first, where we have cooperative, in most of the organizations, they can provide you rice, they can provide you cooking oil and what have you, you then need to go out for shark loans. But most of the cooperatives, they are dead, or they don't exist. And when you go to the bank, the conditions they gave, it make one to run away. Because before meeting of the condition, probably your need might have gone anywhere. So that's what makes people go for shark loans. Shark loans are loans that are not regulated.
All right.
And most loans, they are easier to be comes, but you end up paying 2 times the amount.
Okay, I was going to come in here because you said something about their rates being reasonable, but you also know that some of them charge as high as 40% interest, and you are supposed to pay within probably 2 weeks. How reasonable is that?
Well, you see, because any loan that is not backed by any collateral. Remember, these people, they give you the loan. You have the obligation to pay or not pay. And if you choose not to pay, they can only blackmail you. But there is nothing they can hold you. And trust Nigerians, a lot of them, they go into these loans because they are not intended to pay back. And this is what makes shark loan to use. But for those who have all the reasonable reason to pay the loan, I don't advise them to go for shark loan. We have microfinance banks, over 1,000 microfinance, and they do give loan. Why don't you approach them? And I believe that now we have over 44 million Nigerians that have bank account with BBN number. Why can't the bank give a soft loan at a reasonable rate and easier access so that people will run away from this shark loan? Shark loans are really, really very bad for us, but they come to stay.
Well, let's look at the regulatory issue now. Now, we see that the government has actually tried in no small way, to ensure that these loan sharks are not operating anymore. But then it seems that many of them keep coming up every day, springing up every day. How else do you think the CBN should address this issue?
The truth of the matter that this shark loan, you go back and regulate them. But the moment you say that you are always banning, they will continue coming. The best is regulate them so that anybody that is not regulated will have no role to play. And once you register them and they agree to register, they will have ways of recovering their loan easily. At the same time, we will not allow those who are unregistered to have their way in. We have already registered if you look at the fintechs, and most of the providers, we have registered them, like Facebook, like LinkedIn. So if you register these are the ones that provide room for all this shark loan. So one day, anyone that you have not registered, let it not find their way into the country.
But it would seem that, let me come in here, it would seem that some of them start out from the get-go to be very, very evasive. And that's why there are reports that some of them do not even have known addresses. So, we look at the fact that, well, government probably is trying to put some regulation in place. But what about those who started out wanting to be evasive in the first place? How do we handle those ones?
It's very simple. First, provide room for registering. So anyone decided not to register, you block him, you close him. As long as there is no way to register this shark loan, CBI is not registering them, SEC is not registering them, nobody is registering them. So every day they will come in. You have to have a room for registration so that whoever failed to register is now called illegal. That is the first point. But banning, when you ban You burn 30, 100 inter, tomorrow you burn 100, 200 inter, where do you go? The best, I believe that civil. So anyone that register would must.
If you can hear me correctly, Mr. Garba, you were talking about loan sharks and how that the federal government needs to do more to tame their excesses by ensuring that they get registered. And for those who are not registered, the government should definitely do the needful. Please land on that quickly so we can close. If you can hear me, Mr. Garba. Okay, well, that has been Mr. Garuba talking about loan sharks and how that the federal government needs to regulate their activities.
As an agent for recovery, why don't we find where about them? Since they have agent and the agent are Nigerian employed by this shark loan for recovery of their loan, we should follow that way to trace them and deal with them.
All right, thank you so much. I think this is a good place to leave the conversation.
Thank you.
All right, we're speaking with Mr. Kasim Garuba Kurfi, the Managing Director, APT Securities and Mutual Funds Limited. We'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll bring you the global oil news. Stay with us.